Johnson is taking it out early. Johnson is blazing as they come through the turn and approach the top of the home straightaway. Michael Johnson is there. Mike Marsh, Jeff Williams, Carl Lewis down in lane 1. Through the final meters, Michael Johnson wins it. Tight for second. 19.66. And now he has to wait for the win. And it's a legal world record. The march on Atlanta has begun.
Welcome back to Up Close. He may be the fastest man on the planet. Certainly, there is no one faster in the 200 meters. Sunday at the Olympic trials in Atlanta, Michael Johnson set the world record with a time of 19.66 seconds, shattering the longest standing record in track. He'll, of course, represent the United States in the Summer Games in the 400 meter as well and go for the amazing double-double. And we welcome Michael here to the program. It's nice to see you.
Glad to be here.
And, you know, people should know we offered to fly you in from Atlanta, but you wanted to run, you know, all the way just to kind of keep your pace going. Do you go out like Sunday with the intention, Michael, of setting a record?
No, in a meet like that, you know, when it's the Olympic trials, there's a lot at stake, and you're trying to get on the Olympic team. When you go out to break world records, you go out there and you take chances. And that's the way you break world records normally. You take chances, you take risks that you normally wouldn't take. And sometimes those risks pay off, sometimes they don't. If they don't, you know, if it's an invitational or whatever, you just lose the race. If they don't pay off at an Olympic trials, you're out of the Olympics. So there, I was just going in there trying to win the race and get on the Olympic team.
How was Saturday's performance, also a record, although wind aided? How did that affect your mindset in Sunday's race?
Well, basically, you know, Saturday's race, anytime you're in a preliminary heat, you're just going in there to qualify for the next day's final. And I shocked myself, really. And the 1970 was not something that I had planned to do. I just went out to run as fast as I could, you know, the first part of the race. And after I saw I had it won and I was in the final, I shut it down. So I didn't really even run as fast as I could. And the win was definitely over the allowable, so that was a little bit of a disappointment. But it gave me a lot of confidence going into the Sunday's final.
Yeah, but you mean Saturday after that performance, it didn't click that, hey, maybe Sunday I'll go out, wind or no wind, and set a new world record.
Definitely. I felt like you know, there was that possibility, but I tried to continue to keep my focus on making the Olympic team and winning the race, and that was the most important thing. I think we saw like one of the hurdlers, Jack Pierce, ran 12:91 in the preliminaries and went out the next day and tried to shave that couple of hundredths of a second off to break the world record, ended up crashing the first hurdle and didn't make the team. Are you
the fastest guy in the world?
Yeah, that's always going to be arguable. It's always going to be left to opinions, and since I've started to dominate most of the sprints over the last 6 years, a lot of people feel like I am. And
how do you feel?
Surely after yesterday's performance, a lot of people will. You know, that's not really something that I try to aspire to do, you know, to convince everyone that I'm the fastest man in the world. I just try to go out there and achieve the things that aren't left to anyone's opinion. And nobody can say I don't think he's the world record holder. Everybody knows that 1966 is the world record, and there's no disputing that.
But you wouldn't like that label, Michael Johnson, fastest man in the world?
Of course I would. Yeah, of course I would. And you know, if people want to call me that, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna argue with them. That's a great title to have, and you know, I feel good about it. I feel good that I'm the first person who's not a 100-meter runner, the first man who's not a 100-meter runner to hold that title.
Why is that usually used as the standard?
Traditionally, the 100-meter guys have always been the fastest guys, but since I came along, I've changed a lot of the rules of sprinting, so this is just another one.
Is the 100 something you would like to race in?
The 100 is something that every now and then I'll dabble in, and a couple of years ago, I ran it for half of a season and did pretty good. I ran some world-class times. My goal is to get under 10 seconds eventually, and I think before my career is over, I'll do that.
When you run a race like you did on Sunday, how much decision-making goes on in that 20 seconds or less?
A lot of decision-making. In a 200-meter, a little bit less than in a 400-meter, but there's still a lot of decision-making going on.
What's an example
of it? You know, making the transition from the curve onto the straightaway is one of the most important parts of that race, and you've got guys on the inside of you, guys on the outside of you, and you've got to be aware of what they're doing, and sometimes what they're doing will dictate what you're going to do at some points. You know, when you're coming off the curve and if you got a guy out there in front of you, you got to decide, well, am I going to go with him or am I going to relax and try to get him in the last 20 meters, the last 60 meters? There's a lot of things like that. You got to be aware of where you are position-wise on the track and your lanes and all of those kind of things.
And even, I mean, we're talking obviously split-second decision. So you are thinking about that, and your body is kind of, because of the training, knows where it's going, what it's doing.
Right. And then, you know, there's sometimes you'll make mistakes early in the race. If you make a mistake, you got to be aware of the fact that you made that mistake and how to correct it. All of those things have to happen within, hopefully, 19 seconds.
How is a trial and that kind of decision process different than the actual Olympic Games?
Well, it's not really different. I mean, a race is a race regardless of whether it's an Olympic final or an Olympic preliminary race or just an invitational race. It's all races, and you're out there to win them, and they all basically go the same. It's just that some are more important than others, and when some are more important than others, some you take chances and some you don't take chances.
What made you realize that you could compete and be as successful in both the 200-meter and the 400-meter at this level?
When I was in college, I went to Baylor University out of high school on a scholarship to be a 200-meter runner, and that's what I was in high school. And basically throughout college, but I had some pretty good relay splits on the 4x400-meter relay, and I knew that I had the potential to be a good 400-meter runner. But in college, you can't really split your time between two events. You got to get one event and focus on that event and get ready for conference championships, NCAA championships, and that kind of thing. So it wasn't until after my senior year of college that I decided to get into the 400. And first year I got in there, I ended up ranked #1 in the world. And so I've been going on ever since.
Is the training different? Because you would figure that one might affect the other in a negative manner, the way that you train and the way that you have to perform. How do you make it? How do you make them work for each other?
You have to. What we try to do in our training is make the 400 complement the 200 and vice versa, and we do that by taking the speed that I get from the 200-meter training and use that in the 400, and the 400-meter training, the endurance that I get from that, we use that in the 200. So they both kind of complement each other. When I get to closer to the season and start to specialize my training towards the two events, then I have to sometimes have 2 practice sessions in a day or divide my practice session up into 400-meter training and 200-meter training.
That training comes in handy, especially in Atlanta. What was it, 110 degrees down on the track? And this is where the Olympics, of course, are going to be. And you were telling me really the most heat you've ever run, it was in New Orleans, around that same kind of temperature with a lot of humidity. How does that change things for you in a race like this?
Well, it was, on the track, it was 112 Sunday when we raced, and the temperature was like 100 or 98 or 99 or something like that. But I live in Dallas, and it was 102 in Dallas all week and 103. And so for me, it wasn't really a big adjustment to make, and it won't be a month from now when it'll be even hotter.
An advantage for you, though, versus some people who don't deal with this?
I think that, you know, I'm more prepared for it, but I think now that we've all been through the trials as far as the American athletes, I think that everyone knows a little better now what they need to do to prepare for that kind of thing. But every year, since I can remember, this was my 3rd Olympic trials, and every Olympic trials we've had has been extremely hot. New Orleans in '92. Indianapolis in '88, it's always been a problem.
And it'll sizzle in Atlanta. His running style has been referred to as the reincarnation of Jesse Owens. We're with Michael Johnson, maybe the fastest guy in the world. We'll talk to him about Carl Lewis and the rivalry there and how important image is to Michael Johnson. We're up close in Los Angeles. More in a moment. Don't go away. We're with world record setter Michael Johnson, who will have a chance at 3 gold medals at the Summer Olympics in Atlanta. We talked about being the fastest man on the planet. Do you think you've replaced Carl Lewis in track and field?
That, again, is subject to opinion, again. But I think that most people, most track fans and sports fans' opinions is yes, that Carl is, you know, he's been the premier athlete of track and field for a long time, and the sport was kind of looking for a new star, and I just happened to be in the right position at the right time and have established a lot of consistency and versatility in the sprint events over the past 6 years, and was just sitting right there in the right spot at the right time.
You agree with that, though? You feel like you have?
I feel like I have. I think that you know, most of my fellow track athletes feel, you know, that I should be leading them into the next decade as far as track is concerned.
A far cry from at last year's World Championships in Sweden. Carl Lewis said, quote, "The electricity is not there. There's no buzz, no passionate missions. The one American they're trying to build up, Michael Johnson, question mark, he doesn't have it. He's not doing anything for them." At the time, your response was silence.
That was because Carl, I mean, he regrets that to this day. I mean, we were at the World Championships, and I mean, I was making history, and everyone was, I mean, I could do no wrong. And the last thing you want to do is criticize someone who can do no wrong at the time. Okay. So he regrets that he said that, and he's come back since then and tried to say all kinds of nice things.
He said some nice things after your world record Sunday.
Even giving me advice now on how I need to handle this and that through the media. But
do you listen to his advice?
I mean, Carl didn't do a great job in '84, so I think I'm not going to listen to his advice. I mean, he didn't do a very good job of handling himself, and I think that Carl and I are completely different, so he's got his way of handling, and I've got mine. So you don't get along. You said at one time you two didn't get along. You still feel that way? I mean, you're at opposite ends of the spectrum. Well, for me, you know, we don't get along on the track. Off the track, I don't know him. I prefer to keep those kind of things on the track. And I think that that's healthy for the sport, a rivalry like that. I think that, you know, anytime people know that Carl and I are going to run against one another, or I'm in a race with Carl, he's in a race with me, that there's going to be a fast time, and they look forward to that. I mean, people don't really want to see two guys out there that's just loving one another, you know, running against each other and shaking hands and hugging before the race. They want to see two guys that they feel like, hey, these guys don't like each other. But I prefer to keep it on the track, and what he said last year at the World Championships, those comments, you know, that was out of line because it took it off of the track, and that's not what I like to do. I like to keep a healthy rivalry on the track. On the track, the series, you keep tabs then. What is it? Is it 6 out of 7? You have the edge? Where are we now with I'm not counting anymore. I only count my losses. He's beaten me once. I think I'm like 7. I think it's like 7 out of 8? Right. I think it's okay. So 1 loss in 8 tries. Now, you have said that there's only room for one person to be a track and field superstar. Definitely. I mean, Carl was he was the track and field superstar for so long, and now his time is up, and he's having a really hard time releasing it and moving on in life. He's having a really hard time doing that. His time is up. Age, just better people coming along like yourself? I think that it's a combination of age and better people coming along, and he's had a very long and distinguished career. And I think that you only have so many races in your body, and he's been doing this on a world-class level since like 18 years old. So I think it's time for him to step aside and accept the fact that you can't be the star forever. At age 35, he has made the most of his opportunity. Those who question you have a marketing degree from Baylor, wonder about your marketability, the image that you're too mean or cold out on the track. You don't seem that way to me, but of course you're not out on the track. You're smiling, having a good time here. Is that something that you were concerned about at all? No, I think that most people, you know, understand. I mean, the companies that I work with have a very good understanding and prefer me to be the way that I am on the track, as long as that doesn't find its way off of the track. And that's why it doesn't seem that way to you. But if we were on the track and you were on the lane next to me, you'd understand what they're talking about. But that's the way that I am. On the track, I mean, I'm taking care of business out there. I take my goals very seriously. I take my profession very seriously. And I think that it's very important for me to be that way when I'm on the track, to be serious about what I'm doing. But you always notice when I cross the finish line, as long as I'm first. Yes, well, and Sunday you were quick to go point to that sign. Now, was that somebody's idea, or did you just say, I'm going to get over there and show them how well I did? That was my idea. Oh, it was? Make a nice picture. Oh, very good. All right. Well, you also GQ, there recently was an article about you which showed kind of a different side of Michael Johnson, and nice shoes, by the way. We really did enjoy those. What happens, by the way, your shoes? How long do you keep a pair of running shoes? If it's a pair that I compete in, they special make those. It's a really lightweight shoe, so it doesn't hold up very much after a few races. So I'll normally wear it sometimes 1, 2 races at the most, and then go to a new pair. All right. What happened to the shoes that you set the world record in? Those are in a safe place right now. You're not going to tell us? Not even me? They're in my bag right now. Oh, okay. But there's a lot of people looking for them, so... What are you going to do with those? Decide who I'm going to give them to. And there's a lot of people looking for them, so I may not give them to anyone. I may give them to a couple of charity events that I work with. All right, well, hang on to those. We'll be back with Michael Johnson in a moment. We're up close in Los Angeles. Don't go away. I want to see those shoes. I'm sure they don't smell very good, but Last June, Michael Johnson began waving during the last few strides of his 400-meter victory in the U.S. Nationals. Some say may have cost him the world record. Butch Reynolds said he was somewhat angry because he thought Johnson was trying to show him up, and we're with Michael up close. Let's hit both of those. First of all, we try to show Butch Johnson up? No. Butch Reynolds, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to do that. I was, happy about my performance, and the crowd was really into the race, and I wanted to give them something, and that was just something between me and the crowd. And I think, you know, at the time, Butch didn't have a problem with it, but I think he started reading the newspaper quite a bit, and they were saying he should have a problem with it, so he developed a problem with it. But as far as the world record, I know a world record performance in the 400, and that definitely wasn't that day. And I had to get up the very next morning and start my 200 rounds at 9 o'clock. So I wasn't planning on running a 100% race anyway.
Do you thrive a little bit like with Butch or Carl Lewis, thrive a little bit on the personalities of some of the other runners? Does it make you a better runner?
You know, what I do is study their personalities, because it always kind of translates into what kind of athlete they are on the track, their personality off the track. And Butch is highly emotional and gets caught up sometimes. And so I know how he's going to run based off of that.
So when you run, do you run against yourself or the field?
I run against the field for part of the race. Once I've got the race, I feel like I've got it under control. I'll run against myself and run for time.
Oh, so you're assuming that after a while in the race, you're going to beat the field.
I'm hoping so, but I'm not assuming that getting into the blocks, because I know that those 7 guys out there aren't out there to lose. They're out there to win. So I go into that race running against the field. But the thing is, there's just a very fine line there. You've got to run your own race to a certain extent, because if I get caught up into someone else's race, then I'm running their race and I'm playing into their hands. But you have to be aware of what your competitors are doing out there, because sometimes it'll dictate what your strategy is.
Your string of 53 straight wins in the 400 meter. Do you fear losing one time, one day?
No. I had a string of 38 races, I believe, in the 200 from 90 to 92, and I had that one broken. So I've gone through that disappointment and heartbreak and all of that of having won, you know, so many races and then finally losing one. So I know I'm going to lose a race one day. It's bound to happen. I mean, you can't just go out there and win every day. It's just, I mean, it's just the odds of that happening just aren't very good. So I know it's going to happen one day.
Well, let's hope they don't happen this summer in Atlanta. You know, we're rooting for you, the U.S. team.
As long as it doesn't happen. I got a couple I picked out that I don't want it to happen. The other ones will be okay.
Give us a quick assessment in our last 30 or 40 seconds, since the trials are over with, of our team and the U.S.'s chances in track and field. I
think we've got a really good team. We always have a strong team, but I think that this year, you know, the sprints, the 100 meters particularly, is an event that we haven't done very well at, and we haven't won in the Olympics in that event since '88. And I think that with Dennis Mitchell heading up our group of 100-meter guys, we've got a great chance. I have to feel like I'm going to do pretty well in the 200 and 400, so I think we've got the sprints sewed up. The hurdles look good. All of the sprints and hurdles, men and women, both look good. Distance events, we've got some veterans in there. Mary Slaney's back. And I mean, we've got some veterans with Johnny Gray in the 800, some guys that have some real experience, and so they take that to the games, and they're going to be running against a lot of young Kenyans who, you know, may not. Experience counts for a lot in track and field, so I think that we're going to do pretty well.
Yeah, how about a quick prediction? Gail Devers or Gwen Torrance? What'd you go with there?
I'm going to go with Torrance. She didn't make the 200 team, but even before then, I think that, you know, I would have to go with Torrance. But now that she didn't make the 200-meter team and she's going to focus all of her energy on the 100, I think that she's going to be tough to beat, and she's a tough competitor. I mean, she smiles off the track, but on the track, she's tough. I wouldn't want to race against her.
A little bit like you. Hey, thanks for coming by. We're going to see you in Atlanta. We'll be there for a couple of weeks during the Olympics. Hope to have you on again.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Michael Johnson, and congratulations on the record. We appreciate him being with us here on Up Close. Mike Piazza of the Dodgers joins us on Wednesday. We'll see you then. Have a good one. Take care.